In the 1300s, Francesco Petrarca was the first person to use the term Dark Ages because he believed that writing and philosophy had degraded during the period following the Roman Empire. The Dark Ages is still a source of interest among people today. It is called the Dark Ages because the people of Europe did not write much between the fall of Rome in 476 CE and about 1000 CE. Some modern historians prefer the term Early Middle Ages. These 500 years laid the foundation for modern Europe, but much of that history has been lost. We still have the major events, but historians must use other methods to learn about daily life and culture, such as archaeology. The fall of Rome left Western Europe without a central ruler, and the various groups began fighting with each other for dominance. Some traveling tribes attacked others. That was not new to the Dark Ages. However, some today believe the Dark Ages was a period of cruelty, though the people living in that time were not any more barbaric than people were before, or have been since. They were, however, much less concerned with innovation or technological inventions because they were more focused on survival. Despite the focus on necessities, people still lived through intriguing events during this time. Here are just 7 interesting things about the Dark Ages. Number 1. Christianity unified Europe during the Dark Ages. Christianity began as a Jewish sect, but quickly became independent as its popularity grew. For many years, the Romans persecuted Christians, although the severity of the persecution depended on the emperor at the time. Under Emperor Constantine I, the persecution ceased with the Edict of Milan. The stories about Constantine include that he saw a vision from Jesus before going into battle to take the throne, so he stopped persecuting the Christians. Historians are not able to prove this story as fact. Christianity and the traditional Roman religion coexisted for a few years. Under Emperor Theodosius, Christianity became the empire's official religion in 380 CE. After the Roman Empire fell, more people converted to Christianity. The Germanic tribes who conquered Rome were Christian, although their theology didn't align with the Roman Christians' theology. Still, the religion spread across Western Europe, and with the fall of Rome, the Church was suddenly the main organizational body in the area. The spread of Christianity helped foster things like literacy. Many people were illiterate during the Dark Ages, but traveling missionaries served as educators. Monks built monasteries with libraries that soon doubled as educational centers. Although the Christian Church did see division and became corrupt with power later in the Middle Ages, they were a unifying force in the Dark Ages, giving Western Europe enough stability to rebuild after the fall of Rome. Number 2. Roman culture continued after the fall of Rome. Although the Western Roman Empire ended when Rome fell in 476 CE, the empire had split long before to manage its vast territory better, and the Eastern Roman Empire survived. Constantinople was its capital. The Byzantine Empire continued for about 1,000 more years after the fall of Rome, preserving Roman culture through the Dark Ages. The Byzantine Empire grew during this time, expanding its borders and adopting new laws and cultures. They wanted to take back Roman lands in Western Europe, but were unsuccessful. Although they did hold on to the Roman culture, the Byzantines leaned more towards Greek traditions than Latin ones, adapting the Roman ways to fit their empire. Some of these adaptations included opening up opportunities to the lower classes. Anyone could become an emperor with hard work and luck. Emperor Justinian was one of the most beloved Byzantine emperors, and he started life as a commoner, giving him a unique perspective that served the empire well. He wrote a law code called the Code of Justinian. It consolidated all Roman laws into a non-contradictory and accessible code that has significantly impacted lawmaking since. When the Byzantine Empire finally fell to the Ottoman Empire, many people fled west to Italy, taking Roman culture with them. Western Europe was not uneducated, but the people had lost many of the ancient ideas. Thus, the influx of Roman traditions back into Western Europe kick-started the Italian Renaissance, pulling Europe out of the Middle Ages. Thanks to Constantinople, many Greek and Roman practices are still active today. Number 3. Islam played an essential part in the Middle Ages. Most people do not associate Islam with the Middle Ages, but the spread of Islam was a critical part of Spain's development during this period. Islam began in the Middle East under the Prophet Muhammad. After his death, his followers conquered their neighbors and spread the new religion. As the Islamic Empire grew more powerful, they also focused on developing math and science. We still use Arabic numerals today, and many of their discoveries have fueled modern explorations in these fields. The Muslim armies swept across the Middle East and North Africa, growing a mighty empire and impressive military. They then crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and traveled through modern-day Spain between 711 and 713 CE. For the most part, the people in Spain did not oppose the Muslim forces, so the army set up local governments to incorporate the area into their empire. They did not force the locals to convert to Islam, although there would eventually be tension between the different religious groups. Several of the unique cultural elements in Spain, such as geometric patterns in art and on buildings, hail from their time under Islamic rule. Even though the Islamic forces were strong and highly adaptable when fighting new enemies, they ran into serious trouble when they attempted to expand beyond Spain. Duke Odo of Aquitaine, France, allied with the Franks to stop the Muslim advance. The Battle of Tours was a European victory and halted Islamic advances into Europe. It did not, however, expel them from Spain or southern France. They stayed in those areas, mixing their culture with local European cultures and reminding us that the Dark Ages saw more religious complexity than we might first imagine. Number 4. Charlemagne's interest in learning saved many classical pieces of literature. After Rome fell, Western Europe splintered into various tribes and petty kingdoms, but this separation was less sudden than it first appeared. The Roman Empire had not Romanized everywhere in Europe, so for many, life was the same before and after the empire fell. However, the roads and irrigation systems fell apart with no central governing system. The Germanic tribes settled wherever they liked. They fought amongst each other for power, but no one was strong enough to control Western Europe. That changed with Charlemagne. He was the first son of King Pepin the Short, ruler of the Franks, and he came to the throne in 768 CE alongside his brother, Carloman I. His brother died unexpectedly in 771 CE, leaving Charlemagne alone on the throne. As king, he quickly expanded Frankish territory by conquering the Saxons and pushing south into Italy. He gathered power and took new lands. Charlemagne had a significant piece of Western Europe under his control within 12 years. Pope Leo III even crowned him Holy Roman Emperor, which created tension with the Byzantine Empire. Even though Charlemagne was an impressive military leader, he also made social and economic reforms to support his kingdom. His most remarkable reforms include a literary revival and a focus on education. These changes were limited to the upper class, but under his rule, artistic and architectural projects occurred that influenced the rest of the Middle Ages. Charlemagne learned from the different cultures around him, including the Muslims and the Saxons, and made copies of classic literature. We still have many of those pieces today because Charlemagne believed reading and education would build a strong kingdom, one book at a time. Number 5. The source for the King Arthur legend is possibly Alfred the Great. King Alfred the Great came from Wessex, one of the 7 major English kingdoms during the Dark Ages. By the time he took the throne, the Vikings had overtaken most of those kingdoms. No one expected Alfred to become king, as he was King Aethelwulf's 5th son. He was more interested in literature than ruling, but the Vikings slowly marched across England. Each of his brothers died during this time, and Alfred suddenly found himself on the throne in 871 CE. The Vikings held off on attacking Wessex until 876, although the big attack came in 878. They managed to push all the way to Chippenham, where most of the Wessex forces surrendered. King Alfred, however, did not. He hid in the countryside, collecting people still loyal to him and slowly building up an army. He led small guerrilla-style attacks on the Vikings and soon had a large enough army to surprise the invaders in the Battle of Edington, where Alfred took back his kingdom. It was a massive accomplishment against the Vikings, and their king Guthrum even agreed to join the Christian faith after losing to King Alfred. Alfred then focused on rebuilding his kingdom. The Viking attacks had left chaos in their wake, and he now focused on repairing that. He wanted people to be safe to learn and encouraged everyone who had time to learn how to read. He employed scholars to teach him and copied books for his people. The king also restructured the government to make it more efficient and fairer for the lower classes in his kingdom. When the Vikings attacked again in 885 CE, King Alfred fought them, pushing them back in 886 and taking London. Alfred became the king of the Anglo-Saxons, the first king to unite England. He is remembered as the ideal king. Some historians believe that his triumphs and concern for other people started the legends of King Arthur, the true king of England who would one day return to rule well once again. Number 6. Venice became one of Rome's rivals during this time. Venice started as a town of salt workers and fishermen. It may seem strange that they amassed enough power to rival Rome, even after it fell. Venice was out of the way of the conquering tribes during the end of the Roman Empire, although they came under Byzantine rule for a couple hundred years. By 726 CE, Venice was strong enough to aspire towards independence, but it took several decades before their leaders agreed on a direction. In 814 CE, Venice finally won its political freedom from the Byzantine Empire, although it would not be completely free from their influence for another 25 years. After that time, Venice began capitalizing on its unique location. The city was between Western Europe and the Byzantine Empire, giving them plentiful opportunities for trade. Because the city was not part of other empires or kingdoms, they could help others subvert various restrictions, building a vast trade network. Money poured into the city, and Venice increased its power and influence in Europe while also developing a unique culture. Venice's ruling class also grew wealthy during this time, but their government tended to be along more democratic and nationalistic lines. The duchy became good at manipulating other groups and leaders. They soon became so powerful that Venice rivaled Rome, the seat of the Pope. Venice even used the Pope's decree for their own gain. The city became one of the economic giants of Europe. Eventually, they would use their money and power to aid the Italian Renaissance, providing the financial support necessary to move Europe out of the Middle Ages. Number 7. The Vikings were not a unified society. Almost everyone has heard of the Vikings. Many believe they were war-hungry tribes who terrorized Europe for the joy of raiding. While the Vikings were fierce raiders, they were more than vicious conquerors and had a rich and varied culture. Several groups made up the Vikings, and they were not unified. Different tribes would even fight each other. Still, they shared some cultural similarities, such as a pagan religion we now call Norse mythology. The Vikings originally hailed from the Scandinavian countries and started as farmers and tradespeople. However, Scandinavia is not well suited for subsistence farming. Some people did become successful merchants and traded in exotic items, but the various groups who lived in the area had to supplement their food and goods in other ways. They began raiding neighboring countries. Raiding tended to happen in cycles. It was less common during the harvest because the Vikings were busy at home. Attacks were unlike other war strategies in Europe at the time. They were fast and efficient. The Vikings were well-studied raiders and used their boats to attack towns near bodies of water. Cities near the ocean were vulnerable, but so were villages near rivers because the Viking boats were shallow enough to travel upstream. Eventually, the Vikings settled and established themselves in England, Scotland, Russia, and Iceland, as well as other locales. They even became the first Europeans to discover the Americas, although they kept that secret to themselves. In England, the Vikings eventually settled an agreement with Alfred the Great and became part of English society. In France, they lived in an area called Normandy. They mixed with the French people and developed a new identity. The Normans would go on to change English history again in 1066. Still, by then, the Viking groups in England and Normandy were so different that they could no longer be recognized as Vikings. Although the Vikings were not a unified group, they still changed European history, directing its development through the Dark Ages. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the Dark Ages, check out our book, The Dark Ages, a captivating guide to the period between the fall of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.